Hi, aborted soul. Thank you for, well, I take it as a compliment anyway that you thought I was from the States, but I'm not. I'm from Sweden. Stockholm, Sweden. And the first thing I want to make clear is that I'm not arguing for any religion or any religious practice. I feel that going to church every Sunday or turning to Mecca 3 times a day is just a meaningless ritual. And as far as theologists go, I agree with your point that it's kind of you can't compare it to like historians or philosophers or something. I don't know if I would go as far as I'd say that they're equal to or that they're on the same level as a phariologist, but I get your point and I agree with it. And I also think that it's complete madness that you have a president that thinks that he has mandates from God to go to war and kill hundreds of thousands of people. Another clarification that needs to be done, because I was unclear, is when I said that you cannot argue against religion from a scientific standpoint. Okay, yes, of course you can in some cases, and you should. For example, when Christianity, for example, makes claims about the origin of mankind, then you should argue against that scientifically. What I should have said and what I wanted to say was that there are parts of religion that take on questions that science can't take on. For example, a question like, why does anything at all exist? That kind of question obviously goes beyond the reach of science. So arguing, if a religion makes a serious attempt at answering a question like that, that's when I think it doesn't make sense to argue against that from a scientific perspective. That's what I meant. So where we disagree is where I feel like there are situations where religion can play a meaningful role in our minds, and it is when it comes to these kinds of questions. For some people who want to turn to religion for an answer on these kinds of questions. The issue of the universe being ordered in a mathematically structured way. You asked me what I think a proof would look like. I guess the question is, what would an explanation look like? And I don't know what it would look like. What I do know is that it would not look like a scientific claim, because it can't look like that. Science, because of the nature of the question and the nature of science, the mathematic and the logic in the universe is the same mathematic and logic embedded in science, in physics, for example. So giving a scientific explanation to a question like that would be invalid, because it would be presupposing the elements that it's trying to explain. And this illustrates one of the mistakes I feel like that you're doing, because you asked me for a proof, but a proof is a logical, rational concept, and I don't feel like we can expect anything like that as an answer to a question like, why is the universe mathematically structured? Because of the reasons I just gave. The answer instead would actually, I would say, more that we have strategies to choose from when we have a question like this in front of us. Because one strategy might be to say that there is no answer. And I don't see a problem with that, really. Another strategy would be to turn to some kind of mystical reasoning. A religion, for example. And if it's a serious attempt at giving an answer, a religious answer to this kind of question, and if you just accept that, or if you just assume that there is no answer, I think that's kind of the only choices we have in these kinds of questions. Science doesn't go there, it doesn't set out to provide those kinds of answers, so that's not even an option. And so which strategy of the ones that we have to choose from, that you actually choose, is just at most a matter of taste. It's nothing that you can motivate logically or rationally. And then you also say that it's weird to think that religion can explain anything at all in our universe. And I think this is wrong. Because if you look at questions like why does anything at all exist, you realize that this obviously goes beyond the reach of science. We can't justify any answer to that question scientifically. So again, what we're left with is just which kind of strategy to answering that question would grant us the most sense of meaning. And to some people, that strategy would be something that contains an idea of God, and that's okay. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. That's up to the individual. We can't argue against those strategies from a rational perspective. So, concluding, a lot of religions today, like I've said, make the mistake of competing with science where it shouldn't, where it should just accept that science clearly has the upper hand on explaining things. But the same kind of mistake I feel like you're doing when you're turning to science to answer questions that science has no way of taking on. And where religion might be able to provide an answer that would grant meaning to some people. The people who are inclined to turn to religion in these answers, they are entitled to do so. It doesn't make sense to tell them that they're mistaken. Well, because of the whole discussion I've had. I hope I'm being able to explain why I feel like it doesn't make sense to tell them that they're mistaken. Well, and I'm not entirely sure that you are doing this, that you are turning to science to answer these kinds of questions, because you haven't done it explicitly, but it seems to me like you're refuting religion altogether, so indirectly I guess you are, unless you're just ignoring that there are those kinds of questions. But if you accept that there are those kinds of questions and you're saying religion has never validity in any way, it's never okay to turn to religion, then I guess that you're saying that science is better equipped at handling those questions. I don't know. So, but finally, those questions, science has no way of answering because they go beyond science. And if you're going to make a rationally valid argument, you can't assume what you're trying to explain. So therefore, you can't explain like questions like why the universe is rationally structured or mathematically structured. And those kinds of questions that go beyond science, religion has a slight better chance at answering. We're not forced to turn to religion, but it's a matter of taste if you want to do that. Okay, thank you.